Afternoon. If we can have everyone's attention, please. I'm calling this meeting to order as we continue to make the transition to in-person meetings. Some of the participants are participating via teleconference in today's public meeting, and it's also being live streamed from the Port Authority website. The first order of business we have today is a tribute to Commissioner Dana Martinotti, who is leaving the board and who has been nominated by Governor Murphy to serve on another board, Maritime, if I'm not mistaken. I think she is slated for a vote, according to the Senate President, on next Monday. When you look back the last few years, we have had a number of very distinguished commissioners who have served. Ray Pacino, Congressman Menendez, Richard Bagger, and now Dana Martinotti, who have served with great distinction. And I will tell you, Dana, and I've known for a long period of time, those of us who have served with her understand that she brought about a very quiet and dignified diplomacy. One of the first things Dana said when she became a commissioner, she said to me, Kevin, it's all about security. And that's been her rallying cry, both in her current job as the fire commissioner, councilwoman, principal at Cliffside. Those of us who have watched Dana over the last few years have known what a public servant dedicated that she is. I had an opportunity with the U.S. Attorney to go to her school, and we did this read-in. And you went about the school, and the students and teachers interacted with Dana as if she was the mama bear. And it was just amazing how she just brought that collectivity and love. And those of us who've served with her, Commissioner Richardson and Commissioner McCabe and the New York folks, know what Dana brought to this. And like at some point, all of us, as the commissioners have before us, and executive directors and chairs, and for the last 100 years, you serve, and at some point you move on. Dana comes from a long line of public servants. Sometimes her husband thinks it's about him. He has served as a federal judge, state judge, council member. They are a family steeped in public service. Their son Christian, served in the U.S. Air Force for 6 years. Daughter Brianna served some public service, but in the Martinotti household, it is all about service. So while she's not really leaving, she's doing her public service both in the school system and equally importantly on a very important state board. We are going to miss her on this board. And she headed up with as the vice chair of security. She served on Capitol, operations at Capitol. And I can't tell you what she has done in terms of her contributions, quiet as they were sometimes, louder when they had to be at times. She was the ultimate commissioner. And like I said, she has a lot to be proud of. We have a lot to be grateful for. And at the appropriate time after we're done, we're going to present, at least through the TV or this hard hat, and we have a beautiful plaque for Commissioner Martinotti. But if there's any other commissioner who want to be heard, Vice Chair?
Yes, how do we turn this on?
Green?
Yeah. Oh, good. So Commissioner Martinotti is the ultimate, the quintessential Jersey girl. And I can say, as the Jersey boy from Bergen County and Hohokus, that we respect all the things that you've done. And while you joined us only in June of 21, it was right in the middle of COVID. So it was tough times. And you really helped. Your long public service in Cliffside Park. You've been an educator, as it was mentioned, and a principal, and on your borough council. And you've worked very closely with Rick and our chairman. So on behalf of the commissioners, I wanted to say thank you and good luck and Godspeed in your new positions.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner McCabe.
Sure. I've had the pleasure of knowing the Martinotti family for 20, almost 30 years now. When the commissioner joined, she brought, as you said, that quiet but yet not to be understated level of professionalism to the board that continues. Just add instant credibility and value added. I also want to echo what you said as well, in that the Martinotti name is synonymous with public service. Her husband, clearly she continues to do that and will do that in her next endeavor, understanding what her children are doing. They are the embodiment of what public service should be about in giving unto yourself for the greater good. And she demonstrated that. She exhibited that on day one, and continues to do that, God willing, in her next endeavor. And I wish her nothing but the best. So thank you very much. Pleasure working with you.
Commissioner Richardson.
Distinguished service, public service, and in leadership roles. And in the course of your career, you have inspired many of the young girls in your school, in your public service role. You inspire many women to think about public service and to make it a career choice. The word dignified was used, and I appreciate that. You did bring dignity to the role. And although your style is quiet, we always listen, always consider. You were always thoughtful in your value-added commentary to all of our board discussions. And Chairman, it was about security. And I learned a lot from Commissioner Martinotti about the security considerations. Thank you. About the security considerations. So I'm not going to say goodbye. I'm going to say see you soon. Continue to walk this road of public service, and in the spirit of Women's History Month, continue to tell your story and to inspire women in a public service career.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else want to be heard? Commissioner Richardson, and when we all went up and did that tour on the GW, you and I and a few others, Commissioner Menendez, were looking around saying how beautiful. And Dana turns to me and she says, she was talking about from a security perspective, a vulnerability, and it's a very different perspective. The other thing I can tell you, which I think Commissioner Helmy could appreciate, who in Bergen County could get the Republican senator and the Democrat senators to agree in 30 seconds to sign off, whether it's for this board or the board for maritime. There's universal agreement, and Chairman Giuliani will say it, and Senator Logano will say it, and Senator Shapezi will say it, Senator Sarlo will say it. There's a love and admiration for her. And can you find me one other person, Commissioner Helmy, in Bergen who can get that type of universal support? So that's what we have to say on behalf of the board. I want to say thank you very much, Dana. We'll be seeing you soon. And Dana, if you'd like to speak now is your time.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you all. Thank you so much for those beautiful, heartwarming words. Chairman O'Toole, Director Cotton, Vice Chair Linford, Commissioners. It has been nothing but an absolute honor and privilege to work with all of you. I know you have a lot of work to do. There are historic projects on the horizon, but I am confident that the board, under this incredible leadership that you have, will continue to serve our region, and especially all the wonderful employees at the Port Authority. I wish you all nothing but the best. Continue the good work. Thank you for the experience. Thank you for teaching me so many things. Chairman O'Toole, Director Cotton, Vice Chair Linford, Commissioners, senior staff, Jim, Ben, Peter, Matt, Natasha, and everyone that I crossed paths with. I will miss you all, and I will always remember my days on the board with nothing but honor and pride. So thank you all, and all the best to everybody. Thank you.
I ask everybody for a standing ovation for Commissioner Martinotti. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. And tell Brian, sorry, it's not about him today. Moving ahead to some other business, we have ceremonial service today, which is, I think, kind of cool. We have 3 new commissioners, and we're going to be swearing them in. We have some bagpipes, and we're going to hear from our Port Authority Police with regard to the national anthem. So, Jim, are we ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight? Oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave? Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Order, arms. Turn, toast. Aye, peace. Forward. Arms. Hands. Right. Left. Left. Right. Right. Who doesn't like bagpipes, by the way, right? It's magnificent. And to the new commissioners, we do not do this every day. And it's, listen, over the 101 years, there's been, I think, 21 or 22 executive directors, 20 odd number of chairs, and a certain, I think it's 100 or so commissioners who have graced this land as commissioners of the Port Authority. It is really rarefied air in many ways. It's humbling to be a commissioner. So with that understanding is why we take very seriously this oath. So at this time, we're going to administer the oath to the three new commissioners, starting with Commissioner Bolwich. We ask you to come front and center. The Bible will be held by our Vice Chair, Jeff Linford. All set. Thank you. Please state your name.
I, Chris Always,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United
the
States
Constitution of the United States,
and the Constitution
the Constitution
of
of
the
the
State of New Jersey,
State of New Jersey,
and I will bear true faith
and I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same
and allegiance to the same,
and to the governments
and to the governments
established
established
in the United States
in the United States
and in this state,
and this state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
and I will faithfully,
I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly
and justly
perform all the duties
perform all the duties
of the office of
of the office of
Commissioner of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey,
Commissioner of the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God. Congratulations. Commissioner Cummings. Right hand, repeat after me. I, name, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey. I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, the governments established in the United States and in this state, under the authority of the people, that I will faithfully, impartially, justly perform all the duties of the office of Commissioner of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, under the best of my abilities. So help me God. Congratulations. Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of New Jersey. And I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. Governments established in the United States and in this state. The authority of the people. And I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of the office of Commissioner of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. According to the best of my ability. So help me God.
You guys are okay with supporting and defending the Constitution of the State of New York as well, right?
On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
All righty. Now, at this time, we're going to hold the public meeting, starting with the Commissioner. Thank you, Vice Chair. Good afternoon. The board meeting of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey and its component units is now being called to order. Today's in-person meeting is being held virtually via teleconference with the proceedings live streamed from the Port Authority website. On March 1, the Audit Committee met in executive session, and the Committees on Capital Planning, Execution, and Asset Management met jointly in executive session. Earlier today, the Committees on Finance and the Committees on Capital Planning, Execution, and Asset Management met in public session. The reports will be filed with the official minutes of today's board meeting. The Commissioners also met in executive session earlier today to discuss matters related to the purchase, sale, or lease of real property where disclosure would affect the value thereof, or the public interest, and to discuss and act upon matters involving ongoing negotiations or reviews of contracts or proposals. At this time, we're going to take a moment and deviate from our agenda, and we're going to talk about and honor one of the Port Authority's employees we lost recently who served 33 years. Richard Palacio had served 33 years in operations with us. Recently lost him. He served with his colleagues in the print shop, and he was known for his energy, his vibrancy, his positive attitude. There's 8,000 Port Authority employees, and each one of them blend together to make this Port Authority family work. When you talk to folks who worked with Richard, they tell you he really epitomized the true spirit of what a Port Authority employee is and was. At this time, I ask everyone if we could just stand for a moment of silence for the passing of Richard. Thank you. On behalf of the Port Authority, we pass our condolences to Rick's wife, Judith, and the entire family. One other moment, the other day we had a passing of a legislative giant in New Jersey, Senator Ron Rice, senator from District 28 in Essex County, one of the longest serving senators in the state, the longest serving African-American senator in the state's history, served over 36 years. I served in the Senate with Senator Rice twice. He was an astonishing legislative giant. He had been an underdog his entire life. He championed civil rights, championed tenants' rights, criminal justice system. We lost him way too soon, and New Jersey lost a leader, and I know, Commissioner Helmy, you've worked with him, and you recognize his contributions. Commissioner McCabe, you did as well. I know Mayor, in your capacity, Commissioner Bowledge, and certainly Joe Kelly as the Deputy Chief of Staff, you had worked with Senator Rice. He was a giant. He was a big supporter of Newark Port Authority. And I ask if we just stand for a moment and recognize his passing. Thank you. All righty, for our first order of business, back to our agenda, our Director of Aviation and Redevelopment, James Heitman, will present 2 airport-related redevelopment matters. The first covering planning to improve access to the AirTrain Newark Rail Links station at Newark Liberty Station. The second covers a program reauthorization for the Port Authority supporting infrastructure investment in support of the private terminal developments at JFK. And we will defer on voting to these after we hear from the speakers. At this time, we hear from Jim Heitman.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. First project that I want to talk about is a really exciting one that provides access to the Newark Rail Link Station and NEC at the airport. The history of the existing station was that it was built back in 2001, and the facility was constructed exclusively to provide access to New Jersey Transit and Amtrak. Opening the rail link station for public access to the AirTrain, in addition to NEC Air Rail Station, creates economic value to the airport.
Next slide, Jim.
Yeah, it's not changing. Sorry about that technical issue.
Jim, maybe you could just talk about it.
Yeah, so the NEC AirTrain station is very important. It allows passengers to travel to Penn Station and Newark, and then Penn Station, New York. You can also switch at Penn Station, Newark, to get to Lower Manhattan. So it's a very popular service. But what this program looks to do is to provide access to the local communities. For a number of technical reasons, we weren't able to do that at the original time. What we're seeking to do now is to open that access to the Dayton and Newark and Elizabeth communities.
So, Jim, a couple of broad strokes. Tell me what it will do, tell me about the costs, and tell me about the effect of in terms of cutting down someone's commute from, say, Elizabeth and South Ward to where they got to go, either Penn Station or other places.
So for local community members, it cuts down the travel to the airport or to Penn Station from about 40 minutes down to about 9 minutes. And we have the visuals now, so I can give you the overview. But
right.
What's shown up on the screen here is in yellow is the existing AirTrain system and around the airport. And if you follow that from right to left, it brings you to the rail link station shown in blue on this station here on the presentation. And the red line shows the NEC corridor for New Jersey Transit and Amtrak. So passengers are able to, as I mentioned, go to Newark and Newark Penn Station. What's shown to the left of the screen is the proposed NEC access area, which will provide access to Frelinghuysen Avenue. Next slide. Do that for me. Thank you. So this is changing the orientation. You still see the airport on the top. You see in yellow the NEC line going from left to right, and then the proposed station is shown there in green, and you can see how it provides access to the South Ward of Newark and the Dayton neighborhoods. I'll go back to just describing.
Let's just freelance it, Jim.
Yep, no problem. So what it does, we're going to extend that bridge over to that community, put vertical circulation, and from that location, you'll be able to get there via bus, taxi, public loved ones, and bicycle access. Next slide. So we mentioned some of the benefits. It'll spur transit-oriented development in that area to support the airport. It'll break down barriers to neighboring communities for jobs and transit services, and provides important benefits to Newark and Elizabeth communities and key constituencies for current and future development. It'll create a one-seat ride to Manhattan for South Ward and Elizabeth residents via New Jersey Transit or Amtrak, and it will connect at Penn Station to downtown Jersey City and downtown Manhattan. As I mentioned, it'll speed the access to Penn Station or to the airport from about 40 minutes to 7 to 9 minutes. So the historic background for another program, the Path Rail Extension Project, which would have done essentially the same thing. The project was to extend PATH system from Penn Station to Newark Liberty and provide those same transfer benefits. Originally, the board approved this in the plan at a cost of $1.7 billion, but that relied on $700 million in grants that have not yet been secured, which was causing a major funding shortfall. As I mentioned, this project delivers many of those benefits at a significantly reduced cost and quicker. The PATH extension project is being deferred, but the project that we're building today reserves a right-of-way for a not-to-preclude option to proceed into the future. Part of our planning effort will involve a lot of community outreach, direct outreach to civic organizations, at least 2 planning meetings in the cities of Newark and Elizabeth during the day and during the night, and close coordination with our sister agencies and other specialty groups. So today we're requesting planning authorization for this project in the amount of $12 million. It'll provide for the preliminary design, support for external stakeholder outreach, and provide authorization to enter into agreements to acquire property necessary to achieve the program. The rough order of magnitude cost for the program is at $125 million. That's the end of this portion. If you have any questions.
Any questions from the commissioners on this project, which is promising, short scale? We're going to have this in Port Authority terms in relatively short order, in hopefully sometime 2025-ish. And if we can land that $45 million in grants, it'll cover up to 1/3 of this project. Very promising. I think the most significant issue brought out is that currently it takes 40 minutes to get to Penn Station from Dayton and in that area, and that'll shorten that to 7 minutes, and I think it's significant for the folks in Elizabeth and in the Newark communities. Moving ahead, Jim.
So the next item that I'm here to present about is the JFK Redevelopment Program reauthorization and the award of a design-build contract. So just to remind people of the JFK Redevelopment Program, it's a public-private partnership. $16 billion of investment in the replacement or a new Terminal 1, an expanded Terminal 4, a new Terminal 6, and an expanded Terminal 8, which all adds up to nearly $16 billion in private investment. The Port Authority's portion of that is to provide the necessary infrastructure. So the biggest project in that portfolio is the roadway project. And what that does is takes a very complex roadway network and simplifies it into basically a north loop and a south loop. The south loop provides access to the new Terminal 1 and the newly expanded Terminal 4, and the new north loop serves Terminals T5, T6, and T8. Of course, with that, we bring improved signage, wayfinding, and landscaping, and then this work basically replaces almost all of the utility infrastructure in the central terminal area for power, communications, heating and cooling of the terminals, domestic water, and storm and sanitary drains. In addition, it creates a new parking, ground transportation center and parking garage. So just to highlight some of the benefits of this project and complexities, it's 17 lane miles of new roadways. It's 6 new bridges, which eliminates 7 existing bridges, making it much less of a concrete jungle. It reduces 11 traffic signals. It simplifies 31 decision points that you have to make to get to the right terminal. The Ground Transportation Center and Public Parking Garage provides nearly 2,000 spaces. It's a 5-level structure. It's got a pedestrian bridge directly to New Terminal 1, and it provides electrical charging stations for electric vehicles. So this project was started back in January 11th of 2022 with a request for qualifications, shortlisted 4 teams, and we, as a result of the request for proposals issued on May 5th of 2022, we received proposal from the teams earlier this year, and the selected preferred proposer offered the proposal with the best overall value for the Port Authority. The design build team that was selected is a joint venture between Skanska and Helmar. The lead designer is Parsons Transportation Group of New York, and key subcontractors are Walker Consultants, Datner Architects, Greenman, Pedersen, Inc., and KS Engineers. The schedule for the program is largely driven with key milestones to coincide with the opening of the terminals, Terminal 1, Terminal 6, Terminal 4. As I mentioned, these new roadways will support the new developments, and the garage will open in Q2 of 2027, and the total program ends in Q4 of 2027. The issue that came up with has to do with the spending increase, largely driven by high prices coming back from the Port Authority. So just to put this in context, the new spending for the Port Authority portion of this program increases the approved budget from 2.9 by roughly $1 billion to a new total of $3.9 billion. The roadway projects, as I mentioned, is the single largest contract the Port Authority will award as part of the Port Authority's responsibility to build the needed infrastructure such as roads, garages, electrical, substations, etc. And these are all necessary to support the JFK redevelopment program. We recently received bids that significantly exceeded the amount budgeted in the $2.9 billion in the capital plan that I mentioned earlier. These increases are driven by market conditions, the elongated schedule, escalation, and post-COVID market outlook. This Port Authority investment is an important infrastructure and is critical to support that nearly $16 billion of private investment. So the requested action today is to increase the authorization for the redevelopment program from $2.9 billion by $1.006 billion to a total of $3.906 billion. The second request is to award Skanska Halmar JV a project for the design and construction of the roadway project at the airport in the amount of $1.24 billion. And adjust spending by program category consistent with the updated plan. And what I mean by that is airside, landside, all the different categories that comprise the overall program. And with that, that's the end of my
Great. Thanks, Jim. I know we've discussed this a number of times at the senior staff level. We've discussed it at the various board meetings in executive. Commissioner LaBarbera was kind enough on 2 occasions to give us a perspective from some of the drivers of this, both on a regional basis and national. We're aware of what's happening, not just on a Port Authority project, but other projects across the country. Any commissioners want to have any questions? We're going to defer the voting on this till after the public portion.
Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Eve.
Did want to just make 2 brief comments. With respect to the project concerning Newark, I just think it just bears emphasizing 40 minutes to 9 minutes, 40 minutes to 7 minutes. If you're going round trip from this community to and from the airport, Commissioner Richardson made a very powerful point earlier This makes it easier for you to get to, I mean, that's an hour and a half of your life back. That also facilitates being able to get a job at the airport or to be able to get to other parts of the region because of the shorter commute time. In addition to all the benefits that you mentioned, I just really wanted to underscore the point that Commissioner Richardson made before. Much greater access for the community, and I think it's, can be life-changing in terms of the time that so many community residents will get back and will facilitate them being able to take advantage of economic opportunities at the airport or elsewhere. And with respect to the JFK project, just beyond game-changing. I am not an engineer or a scientist, but when I read reduction of 11 traffic signals and simplification of 31 decision points, that to me says it's a more robust system, but it's also a safer system. As somebody who's in and out of JFK quite a bit, all those decision points can create hazards for people who are not as familiar with that airport. So this is a spectacular project, and I think it's also going to be one, as you said, that makes the airport much more user-friendly in keeping with the major investments that are made. But my assumption is that it'll also be much more both user-friendly and safer for people who are visiting JFK.
Thank you, Commissioner Eve. Anyone else want to be heard? Jim, thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this point, we're going to hear from our Executive Director to provide his executive monthly report. Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last month has been an extraordinarily busy period of time, I would say even for the Port Authority. I want to quickly review these highlights in this report, but I want to start as usual with an expression of gratitude to all Port Authority employees for their continued commitment and extraordinary hard work, and also express gratitude to the leadership of the 23 unions that represent the majority of our employees. Let me begin with two personnel matters. First, I want to extend my public congratulations to the three new commissioners, Commissioner Helmy, Commissioner Kelly, and Commissioner Bulwidge. I look forward to working with you. Second, I want to take note of the impending retirement of a senior executive. That Huntley Lawrence will retire as of April 3rd, which is before the next meeting of this board. He couldn't be present today, but this is his service. This will be the last meeting of the board during his service. Huntley has really been an extraordinary and effective and positive leader at this agency throughout his career, 38 years of service to the Port Authority. He has been in the position of first Director of Aviation and then Chief Operating Officer throughout the time the Chair and I have served at the Port Authority. He has held a multitude of positive and responsible positions across the agency in his 38 years. He has really been, an extraordinary leader and has served at one of the highest levels of performance that I personally have seen in my career, and I think that applies to his general service at the agency. He has contributed in so many different ways. It is impossible to do justice to the quality of his service, even if I were to make a long list of his accomplishments. The agency and the region are in his debt. We salute him, we will miss him, and we wish him Godspeed in his next chapters. Now, on to our busy recent few weeks, and I'm going to do this in chronological order, beginning with at the last board meeting. On February 14th, just almost exactly a month ago, the Port Authority opened the newly renovated and fully accessible North Walk of the George Washington Bridge, a key milestone in the Restore the George project. It will significantly improve the experience for bicyclists, pedestrians, and users with mobility challenges. The new rehabilitated path also features 2 open-air viewing platforms for pedestrians and bicyclists. When the entire bridge's $2 billion restoration program is complete, the north side sidewalk will be completely devoted to cyclists and the south will be devoted to pedestrians. Just 2 days later, we faced a challenge of a different sort. On February 16th, JFK faced a daunting event. A small isolated fire in the JFK Terminal 1 main electric room incapacitated key equipment and resulted in an extremely damaging power outage that forced a 3-day closure of Terminal 1 at JFK. During this time, heroic work by the executives at the airport and the workers up and down the line accommodated as many flights as possible at other JFK terminals, but many flights were diverted or canceled. Round-the-clock work by JFK operations, agency engineers, and outside experts working together to get Terminal 1 back online with key equipment specially delivered from distant supply bases. On February 23rd at JFK, we celebrated, however, a major event. The Port Authority was joined by Governor Hochul for a groundbreaking at JFK's Terminal 6. That was the announcement of the start of construction on the $4.2 billion new Terminal 6. We were joined not only by the governor, but by Congressman Gregory Meeks and Queensboro President Donovan Richards, and the leadership from our private partners at Terminal 6. The start of construction on this project is particularly significant as it represents the fourth and final piece of the $18 billion JFK vision plan, and it is a key piece of moving that project forward. On Monday of this week, the Port Authority released the Options for Mass Transit Solutions to LGA report, a 450-page exhaustive analysis of 14 different options. The panel, an expert panel, 3 leading international transportation experts, expressed a strong preference for a one-seat subway ride as the most effective way to move travelers from cars to mass transit. But the panel took note of the severe constructability and cost challenges to building a subway extension. And therefore, the panel recommended a near-term focus on improving bus service to provide better, faster transit access to LaGuardia, as the public benefits would be realized sooner at lesser cost. We will be bringing commissioners a planning authorization request to the board in the next 60 to 90 days. And then yesterday, we announced that LaGuardia's Terminal B was named the world's best new terminal by Skytrax, the international transport rating organization, in fact, the leading rating organization in the airport and airline field. The honor was based on customers surveyed around the world. That was a dramatic change from prior customer surveys when Port Authority airports regularly rated last. Skytrax also awarded LaGuardia Terminal B its highest 5-star airport terminal rating, and I'm pleased to say this is the first North American terminal to be awarded such a rating. And I would also like to say we are committed to follow this recognition for LaGuardia to achieve world-class recognition for the new Terminal A at Newark and for the terminals that are currently under construction at JFK. And finally today, we just reported, you heard our CFO report, a very strong 2022 in our 2022 financial reports. We are committing, as you've also heard, a major new initiative at Newark Airport to expand community access to the New Jersey Transit and NEC rail stations. And pending before you is a major new construction contract at JFK. It has been a busy 30 days, but with Mr. Chairman, with this, I conclude my report.
Right. Vice Chair?
I just wanted to add some comments about Huntley for his long service, the importance he's played in the expansion and renovation of our 3 major airports, his gentlemanly approach to working with commissioners, including yours truly when I would cross-examine him on things, and his sense of humor, which is not as well known. But I have to share with you one comment at the Christmas party. I said, "What keeps you up at night? What do you fear?" He says, "Well, I get some good sleep, but I must tell you the thing I fear most is having to speak to the troops after the chairman.
That's not very nice.
He then went on to say he is so eloquent and has everything in terms of the vision of the authority at best interest that it's hard for him to follow you. So I just wanted to give you a sense of humor as well as respect for you, Mr. Chairman. And so, Huntley, we say thank you very much.
But he was joking when he said that.
Of course, I said a sense of humor.
I got it. So we're going to have a tribute to Huntley in April. It's, there's very few employees that, Rick, we've come across in the last 6 years that defines Port Authority, passion, love, dedication. So his 38 years, and when you talk to him, he can tell you like about every nook and cranny. Whether he was aviation, he can tell you about PATH. He can tell you about port. He can tell you about bus terminal. He is just such a magnificent human being in so many ways. Jersey resident, by the way. Essex County resident, just so we know. There's not enough we can say about him in April, but we're going to try to do justice to his service. Couldn't be more happy for Huntley and his family. Rick, to your comments about JFK, Governor Hochul, when she came to that event, first of all, the energy level in that room was just, you saw it, Commissioner LaBarbera and Eve, we were all sitting there. And even though Commissioner Hochul talked about this was her fourth, almost routine ribbon cutting, it really completes the cycle of planning up there. And when you step back and see what some of the greatest contributions that Huntley and others have left in the last 10 years, is going to be the redo, the magnificent world-class redo of the three airports, LaGuardia and Newark and JFK. It's significant. It's just absolutely breathtaking. And very few times in our lifetime you're going to see that type of opportunity. And led by Huntley and you, Rick, we're going to have an opportunity to really bring those awards, both to LaGuardia, JFK, and to Newark. It's something we all should be proud of. Any other commissioners want to speak or have a question for our executive director? Yes, Commissioner Cohen.
I'll pass this along as an idea. We can talk about it later, but we really are coming to the end of a cycle. I was around during the beginning of this cycle where people said sort of the airports are going to be the way the airports are, and there were a whole series of people, I think, who brought about what has been a transformation, will ultimately be a transformation because we're still, dealing with works in progress of the three major area airports. LaGuardia is the most sort of recent, I guess, Newark Terminal A also in terms of the public appreciation and embrace. But it probably would make sense sometime in the next year or two to really take a step back and understand what happened here, because it will not be easy ever to replicate. Hopefully, maintenance will be such that the replication will not be required for generations. But I do think sort of understanding how we got from where we were to here and what this agency did and what in some instances had not been done over the past, it's really 50 years to take us both to the point of really being in desperate straits to now being literally world-class leaders. So, I just didn't want to miss the opportunity to try to put a marker in that we actually do take the time to think through how we've accomplished, how this organization has accomplished, what a lot of people said would never be accomplished.
To your point, I think you got to know where you've been to know where you're going. Whether it was when we talked about Truman going to JFK back in, it was 48. And you talk about the acquisition of those three airports. I think the commissioners, all of us, whether we're here for a year or a day, we need to understand how we came about to acquire the airports, how we've improved upon the airports, and what our vision plan is for the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. But again, looking back 50 years from now, Steve, I think we're going to say it's a rare opportunity. We caught lightning in a bottle, and we're able to put together these 3 world-class airports that, frankly, this region deserved decades ago. It was either never recognized, we didn't have the ability to do it, didn't have the money, and we've captured it, and we're going to continue. Our hope is Terminal B is on the radar to be redone in the same spectacular fashion as Terminal A. But I think maybe in a few months we'll have that introspective and talk about what we've done and where do we go from here. I think it's a great idea, Steve. Anybody else? All right, at this time we're going to take a step back and we're going to have an opportunity to hear from the members of the public. to comment on any Port Authority matters. This public comment period, which will be limited to 30 minutes in total, provides an opportunity for members of the public to present their views directly to the board, but does not provide for the dialogue. Members of the public wishing to discuss a specific issue with the Port Authority staff are advised to contact our Public Affairs Department. Speakers are asked to comply with the fixed limit time of 3 minutes. We have 11 speakers who have signed up. One has submitted his written comments. Nellie Weissman, is that accurate? Anybody else? Jim, besides?
That's correct.
Okay. So then we have 10 speakers. The first speaker, Jacqueline Weimer. Jacqueline here?
Thank you. I'm Jacqueline Weimer. I serve as a city council member for the city of Bayonne. I thank you for having me and allowing me to speak about a very important issue. I'm here in support of not only the family of Edward Paradine, but in support of the estimated 12 million Americans that contemplate taking their own life on an annual basis. In 2020 alone, the United States suffered the loss of 45,979 individuals to suicide. That is men, women, and yes, even children that lost their lives. 679 of which were from the state of New Jersey, 1,642 from the state of New York. How many people, I ask you, have to lose their life before we take the necessary action to help prevent it? Suicide is preventable. Preventive and protective strategies can help save lives and save families a lifetime of loss, heartache, and pain. The Honorable Mayor James Davis of Bayonne, along with my colleagues and I representing the City Council, recently sent you a letter imploring you to install some much-needed fencing, safety netting, and additional safeguards that would increase overall prevention efforts along the Bayonne Bridge. I urge you, and quite frankly, I beg you, to see that this issue makes its way onto the agenda for your next board meeting, and that it takes top priority in getting approval and implementation. Admittedly, I am not certain how many individuals out of the 679 that took their life in 2020 did so along the Bayonne Bridge. However, I do know that if even one, it was too many. The commissioners read through the current financials, and indeed the director stated that it was a strong 2022. The wonderful world of Google tells me that the Port Authority estimates revenue at $4.8 billion annually. I ask you to please find it in your heart that this very important and much needed issue sees its way to your balance sheet. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Karen Paradine?
Good afternoon. My name is Karen Paradine, and I am here today on behalf of myself, my two children, my daughter Casey, who's here with me today, and my son Landon, who's away at college, and I'm also here in memory of my husband, Edward Paradine. My husband, Ed, took his own life by jumping from the Bayonne Bridge 2 months ago on January 13th. I would like to give you a little glimpse into who my husband was. Ed was a lifelong Bayonne resident. He went to school in Bayonne, grew up in Bayonne, and raised his family in Bayonne. For the 8 months prior to his death, Ed struggled with mental illness. He fell into a deep depression, was anxious, and had great difficulty sleeping. Although 8 months may not seem like a long time, I am sure considering what Ed was going through and the toll it took on him, he must have felt like he was struggling for much longer. I firmly believe that when he jumped from the bridge, he felt completely hopeless, helpless, and like he was a burden. to his family. Ed was an intelligent man who had a loving family, a successful career, and many friends. He was a longtime Little League coach and loved watching the young boys he coached flourish not only on the baseball field, but in life. Above all, Ed's children were his pride and joy. He was like any other person in this room until his brain betrayed him and he felt like he had no other option than to take his own life. Ed was not a man who would do something without thinking things through. However, on the fateful day when he took his own life, I know in my heart he felt like there was no other way out. My goal in being here today is to advocate for either fencing or suicide deterrent netting to be installed on the roadway side of the Bayonne Bridge. I do not understand why neither of these were installed at the time the bridge was raised and then reopened in 2019. Once the bridge was raised from a drop of 151 feet to 215 feet, a fall from that height practically guarantees death. Why a high fence was put on the walkway side and not on the roadway side is baffling to me and to just about everyone else I have talked to about this issue. After Ed's death, my son Landon started a petition on change.org to have a fence or netting installed on the roadway side of the bridge. He has received an outpouring of love and support for this project from many people, not just from Bayonne, but from all over the country. I'm so proud of Landon and truly hope that his petition makes a difference. The Port Authority approved the installation of a higher fence and suicide prevention netting on the George Washington Bridge in 2017. Right now, I believe there is a temporary fence and netting on the roadway side of the GWB, and the permanent steel fence is expected to be completed by 2024. From reports and articles I have read, these barriers have saved countless lives. I just cannot understand why suicide barriers were approved for the GWB in 2017, yet when the Bayonne Bridge was raised and reopened 2 years later in 2019, no one thought to add suicide barriers to both sides of the Bayonne Bridge. Ed was not the first person to take his life by jumping off the Bayonne Bridge, and it saddens me to say that he probably will not be the last. I implore the Port Authority to move forward with the installation of either a fence or netting on the roadway side of the bridge. This is an issue that is long overdue. How many more people have to die on the Bayonne Bridge before something is done? Had fencing or netting been installed when the bridge was raised in 2019, I have no doubt that my husband would be alive today. To quote the president of the support group Coping After Suicide, research shows that if you erect bridge barriers, it does decrease the rate of suicide and the likelihood that an individual will take their own life by jumping off a bridge. It is very uncommon for them to seek out an alternate substitute means. So what the barrier does, it makes it much less likely that the person is going to try to kill themselves by any means. Also, in a survey of a group of people who survived jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, all the survivors favored the construction of a suicide barrier on the bridge. Some of the reasons they gave were it would discourage suicidal persons, it would enable people to think about it and possibly change their minds, and it would make it less accessible. There is so much data out there regarding barriers and the decrease in suicides when they are in place. One example is the Duke Ellington Memorial Bridge in Washington, D.C. In the 7 years before the barrier was built, 24 people committed suicide at the site, whereas only one person died by suicide in the 5 years after the barrier was installed. Although the nearby Taft Bridge is visible from the Ellington Bridge, and it has no barrier, there was no increase in suicide from the Taft Bridge following the construction of the Ellington barrier. Another example is the Augusta River Bridge in Maine, where 14 people jumped to their deaths prior to a barrier being built in 1983. After the barrier was constructed, suicides from the bridge were completely eliminated, and there was no increase in people jumping from nearby high structures. According to the Journal of the American Medical Association, in 10 studies that were conducted at bridges, the pooled estimates indicated that barrier installations were associated with an 84% reduction in the number of suicides per year. I could give many, many examples of how effective suicide barriers are. The facts are obvious, and there is irrefutable proof of the effectiveness of barriers such as fencing and suicide prevention netting. Overall, the data on barriers at jumping sites show that they are effective in reducing suicides from the site itself. In addition, no study has found an increase in suicides from other nearby structures after a barrier is built. Once again, I do not believe my husband would have sought out an alternative means to take his own life if there were barriers on the Bayonne Bridge. He was very familiar with the bridge. It was close to our home. He had traveled over the bridge hundreds of times during his teenage years, going over to Staten Island with friends, and also while commuting back and forth to St. John's University during his college years. Although I know there are people in favor of putting signage with the suicide prevention hotline number and possibly an emergency phone on the Bayonne Bridge, it is highly unlikely that a person who is suicidal and is already on the bridge would take advantage of those options. These people are already completely desperate, at their breaking point, and think they have no other choice but to take their own life. Dr. Richard T. McKeon, the head of the Suicide Prevention Branch of the Federal Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, said that such phones should be considered a complement to, not a substitute for, a barrier. There are people who are just not going to use the phone if it's there, he said. Some might, but many won't. I myself strongly believe that the only reliable options to prevent suicides from the Bayonne Bridge is for either an inward curving fence or suicide prevention netting to be installed. In closing, I am once again strongly urging the Port Authority to move forward with installing either high curved fencing, suicide prevention netting, or both on the roadway side of the Bayonne Bridge. I have no doubt that such efforts will save lives. If even one family can be saved, the agony and intense grief and pain our family is going through right now, if even one life can be saved, the efforts and the cost involved will be worth it. My husband's life mattered. Everyone's life matters. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Karen, first and foremost, first of all, we heartfelt condolences on behalf of the entire Port Authority family. It's heartbreaking to hear what you have said and the horrible tragedy you've had to endure, and to hear the story about your husband, Edward. It reaches all of us. All of us have someone that we know that is in need, and I don't think we as a society do enough, both in terms of just attention and dollars to mental wellness. And to your specific request, we are going to take a hard look at it, and to those specific examples you've given us, it's going to be very helpful. But beyond all that, we want to extend our condolences to you and your family, and to Casey, and to your two sons.
Thank you.
It's not a life that's going to be lost, because we're going to do something. And I'm hoping something positive comes out of that.
I hope so too. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia Patek, PTAK. Okay. Murray Bowden. Murray.
This is kind of new for me. I just got the wheelchair a couple of weeks ago, and I'm learning how to use it. I don't learn so fast as I used to learn. But listening to what went on here today, I need to say that the Port Authority has one of the most humane staffs I've ever come across. There had to be at least 50 people who helped me today. I don't know how to adjust this and how to manipulate it and how to do all those things, and it's a learning experience for me. And it's kind of discouraging when I can't stand up when you all do. I've spoken here about a number of items in safety and making the roads and the lines safer. And I need to tell you all that I've been asking this for 20 years and gotten nowhere, so I guess I've been doing it wrong. So I make each of you responsible when you drive to look at the road markings, see if they give you advance information so that you know where you're going, and the lines and the roads that were designed for 50 years ago just don't work today. So each of you is responsible to see, can you see that crosswalk? Is it I drove here from the tunnel and through, I don't know what those towns were, but every crosswalk was obvious to me. Other parts of the state, they have crosswalks. They don't look the same to the driver. By the way, I may run out of time because I can only see the clock up there and there is no timer, but the timer's over here and I'm talking to you all. Things like this building needs some updating because I'm in a wheelchair, but you can get into the bathroom and just can't get out. Think about it. We've been doing things the old way for so long, we forget that the younger generation is taking over. You've seen it here. These people have been showing you what the future is. My generation has to get off the stage. We've been doing it too long. We're not flexible. We don't know how to change. I want to thank the more than 50 people who helped me today to learn how to do what I have to do. And it hasn't been just recently. For the last every years that I've been here, Port Authority people have been excellent. Thank you all.
Thank you, Murray. Thomas Gretsch? Thomas? No? Okay. Jason Anthony. I see Jason's here.
Good afternoon, Kevin. Good afternoon.
Hey, Jason.
The rest of the commissioners. It is very heartbroken to hear cases of suicide. And actually, commissioners, I witnessed a person trying to do the same thing at the Port Authority bus terminal almost 2 months ago. We should have visible signage in every single facility, including the path, because this is not a New Jersey problem or a New York problem. This is a nationwide problem that grew due to COVID. And as a transit advocate that I am, even though I live in New York, but uses the path, I should say that there's more to be done. Because a month ago was that gentleman who lost his life. Tomorrow could be me or anyone around us. So it's up to you guys to do the right thing. Just like the Metropolitan Transportation Authority did several months ago regarding signage at the edge of the platform of each of the 472 subway stations plus commuter rails. And regarding accessibility, there's need to be more to be done. because nothing regarding accessibility was heard or mentioned today. When I was recovering from a foot surgery back in 2017, I needed to use the elevator. And the Port Authority on the path, especially, doesn't provide us with alternatives if an elevator is broken down or not in service. And regarding projects, I wish that you guys will incentive those contractors that will conclude projects not only on time, but early and on budget. Because 2026, it could be too late, but if you guys could give an incentive to those contractors that end projects early and on budget, that could be much better. So I'll see you guys next month in Lower Manhattan.
Thank you, Jason. Christopher Grief?
For the record, it's Greif. I cause grief now. Good afternoon, everyone, commissioners. I'm Christopher D. Greif. As an accessibility advocate to all transportation in New York and does come in the border, we need to remind that on the trains, as well as the PATH trains, and as Jason Anthony already mentioned, all the good stuff, as well as other things, we got to work on about safety. Any kind of safety needs to be make sure, because a person can jump, but some of these fences has to be a little higher for safety, because with high winds, somebody can get hurt also. This is something that MTA has been mentioning this. We have mentioned this to everyone. Safety is number one. Second, at your World Trade Center station, it'll be nice to see accessibility signages to know where's the exit to the elevator. Lucky I can sense it with my own sensors where the elevator is, but if a person who cannot see or hear, they need to know where to go. I loved your signs here at Exchange Place. It gives me directions how to get onto the elevator, to another elevator, and get to the street. That is something I really appreciate that. And something that's really good to give people directions how to get out safely. We need to continue also working on the reduced fare. You have seniors, but we also forget people with disabilities, including our veterans who are here, who retired, or cannot go out into the armed forces. They are using your PATH trains. I try to use your PATH trains, but I can't because there is no machine shows me the reduced fare price. And for the record, I did have to pay a full fare price, which is really hard. And with the air trains going to JFK, $8.25 is way too much for any person from a disability to a senior and low income. The problem is it is too much money, and it's really hard for people who want to go to the airport. We have seen a lot of people using our regular MTA buses. We see them going by taxis, car service, or get someone to drive them there. We have to work on helping everyone. And any project, if we're working on, we need to make sure we see the word accessibilities. Not elevators are always a good thing, but ramps. Because remember, ramps don't break down. Ramps help to get the person where they have to go. So I hope that we can do something about more accessibilities, not just for seniors, people with disabilities, and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Darius? It's Darius?
There we go. Good afternoon. Today we applaud the Port Authority staff for beginning the planning process to open the Newark Airport train station and urge the commissioners to vote in supporting it. Opening the station is an historic decision that corrects a social wrong, one that has prevented Newark residents from accessing a station in their own neighborhood, all because of a poorly crafted federal law. And with all due respect, our team has clocked up to 60 minutes in taking mass transit from the Dayton neighborhood to access the station that some of them can see from their homes, but they can't walk there. My name is Darius Solahub, and I'm a professor of architecture at NJIT. In 2017, Mayor Ras Baraka asked me and other academics and stakeholders to join city officials to form what we now call the Airport City Newark Coalition. Our goal then was to work with Newark residents to anticipate a PATH train extension to the airport station, which, as we know, was proposed and then tabled. Since then, and with generous support from the Prudential Foundation, NJIT and the Airport City Newark Coalition has kept alive hope that the station would open. We have initiated studies, engaged students, conducted numerous community meetings, and convened a conference, all to make sure that when the station opens, its benefit to the surrounding community could be maximized. To that end, we've made tangible progress. The possibilities of a reopened station are now prominent in Newark's master plan and the city in the process of rezoning the station's surrounding land use. Last year, NJIT received joint funding from state and federal economic development authorities to develop market strategies for various forms of development around the station. And currently, we are working to develop a framework for community benefit agreements to ensure local participation in this and other developments in Newark South Ward. With a successful vote, today marks the end of a committed struggle, but it is also a beginning. There is much work to be done to ensure that a reopened station is not yet another park and ride, or like the previous initiative, it is also tabled, but instead it becomes a prominent threshold that also includes a PATH station, a portal that connects the cities of Newark and Elizabeth to their airport. Imagine one day arriving in New Jersey, not to stand before traffic wondering where your ride is, but instead to emerge into a thriving downtown neighborhood, buzzing with restaurants, hotels, and city life. It is the vision of such a place that keeps our group and its constituency moving forward, and we look forward to a continued partnership with the Port Authority in doing so. Thank you.
Thank you, Darius. Bill Young, please. Bill Young.
Thank you, Chairman O'Toole. I want to thank Governor Murphy for appointing Mayor Chris Bulwich to the board. Commissioner Bulwich is kind, smart working, approachable, tough but fair, and most of all, he's normal. He's a friend of the working man and a friend of the working women and their families. He runs one of the biggest cities in New Jersey, and he runs it well. I want to again thank Governor Murphy for scheduling Commissioner Bulwich's appointment so it coincides with March 17th, tomorrow, St. Patrick's Day. It's an honor to have a great Irish leader like Chris on the board to look out not just for fellow New Jersey Irish citizens, but also the citizens of New Jersey and New York. Tomorrow's headline in the papers could read, Happy St. Patrick's Day from the Port Authority. The New Jersey Irish have arrived. Bulwich, Kelly, O'Toole, and Kevin Patrick McCabe. Thank you, Governor Murphy, for another New Jersey Irishman on the PA board, Chris Bulwich.
Well, I'll assure you, Bill, that the other commissioners are normal too, just so you know. All right. Thank you for those comments for the new commissioner. Tana Prado? No? Last one is Paramel. Garg, are you signed up here? Paramel is the chief counsel to the Governor Murphy. He's in the audience. Paramel, great job. Thank you. Looking forward to continuing to work with you. You're an excellent, superb public servant. Thank you. All right, and that concludes our public portion. We're going to move ahead. First of all, we're going to confirm, Jim, that there's no other either signed-up speakers or those who have submitted comments, and those who have submitted written comments, including Mr. Weissman, that'll be submitted as part of the record here today.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, we'll now proceed with voting for the items. Each of the respective committee chairs will provide a brief report prior to each of the matters being considered. We'll have the Vice Chair Linford provide his report on behalf of the Committee of Capital, Planning, Execution, Asset. Vice Chair, may I have your report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Chair of the Committee on Capital Planning, Execution, and Asset Management, I will now report on 4 items under the committee's purview. The first item, which was discussed earlier in the public meeting, reauthorizes the JFK redevelopment program at an amount of $3.906 billion, consistent with the terms presented by our Director of Aviation Development. Prior to making a motion on this item, I ask the corporate secretary to note any commissioner recusals.
There are no recusals.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have questions or comments on this item at this time? I now request a motion on this item.
So moved.
May I have a second? I now request the corporate secretary to call the roll for voting on this item.
Chairman O'Toole?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Linford?
Yes.
Commissioner Bolich?
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Eve?
Yes.
Commissioner Helmy?
Yes.
Commissioner Horwitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarbera?
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosado?
Yes.
As the votes are in order, this item is approved. The next item, which was also discussed earlier in today's meeting, authorizes $12 million for planning and preliminary design work for a project to construct new at-grade and elevated access to the AirTrain Newark Rail Link Station, consistent with the terms presented by our Director of the Aviation Department. Prior to making a motion on this item, I ask the corporate secretary to note any commissioner recusals.
There are no recusals.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? I now request a motion on this item.
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I now request the corporate secretary to call the roll for voting on this item.
Chairman O'Toole?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Linford?
Yes.
Commissioner Bolich?
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen? Commissioner Eve?
Yes.
Commissioner Helmy?
Yes.
Commissioner Horwitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarbera?
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosado?
Yes.
Thank you. The third item authorizes $2.15 million for planning and preliminary design for a project to rehabilitate portions of the Building 14 roof at John F. Kennedy International Airport. This building serves as the Port Authority's administration building. Prior to making a motion on this item, I ask the corporate secretary to note any commissioner recusals.
There are none.
Do any commissioners have questions or comments on this item? I now request a motion on this item. May I have a second? Thank you. I request the corporate secretary to call the roll for voting on this item.
Chairman O'Toole?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Linford?
Yes.
Commissioner Bolich?
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Eve?
Yes.
Commissioner Helmy?
Yes.
Commissioner Horwitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarbera?
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosado?
Yes.
As the votes are in order, this item is approved. The final item reauthorizes a project to rehabilitate the Center Avenue and Lemoyne Avenue bridges at the George Washington Bridge at a total cost of $146.8 million and authorizes the award of a construction contract to complete the project. Prior to making a motion on this item, I ask the corporate secretary to note any commissioner recusals.
There are no recusals.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, I now request a motion on this item.
Moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I now request the corporate secretary to call the roll for voting on this item.
Chairman O'Toole?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Linford?
Yes.
Commissioner Bolich?
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen?
Yes.
Commissioner Eve?
Yes.
Commissioner Helmy?
Yes.
Commissioner Horwitz?
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarbera?
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Rosado?
Yes.
As the votes are in order, this item is approved, and I turn it back to our very normal chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Next, Commissioner McCabe, as Chair of the Audit Committee, will provide his report and an item that for the board's consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pursuant to its authority under the bylaws and its charter, the member of the Audit Committee have reviewed and approved the Port Authority's financial statements and appended notes for the year ended December 31st, 2022. Such as the committee recommends to the board that the financial statements be included in the Port Authority's 2022 annual report and other publications as appropriate. Prior to making a motion on this item, I ask the secretary to note any commissioner recusals on this matter.
There are no recusals.
Do any commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, now I request a motion on this item.
So moved.
I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Now I request the secretary to call roll for voting on this item.
Chairman O'Toole,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Linford,
Yes.
Commissioner Bolich,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohen,
Yes.
Commissioner Eve,
Yes.
Commissioner Helmy,
Yes.
Commissioner Horwitz,
Yes.
Commissioner Kelly,
Yes.
Commissioner LaBarbera,
Yes.
Commissioner McCabe,
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosado.
Yes.
The votes are in order. The item is approved. Mr. Chairman, back to you.
Thank you very much. Before we close the meeting, just a word to the commissioners, the new commissioners, Helmy and Bolwich and Kelly. Welcome to the Port Authority family. I think today you get a sense of what the Port Authority is, what it really means. I think the three of you will have brought great backgrounds, great experiences. You're going to add your experiences to this wonderful board. Looking forward to working closely with all three of you for the future.
Same thing, Chairman.
Amen.
There being no further business, I move to adjourn.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Meeting's adjourned. See everybody in April.